3.
Hello everybody. This is our second attempt to do this video. Good news is that I'm getting married, so I guess my family was calling and giving me a thanks. Anyways, I wanted to was doing a video for you guys, and girls, few girls that are into this. For some reason, not as many women are that need to be. But let's talk about one of these, what I consider is the greatest deal in the used audio market amplifiers, especially for tube amplifiers. And that is, of course, the forgotten Shanling SP80. And that is one of the reasons it's one of the greatest deals you can find. It is an EL34 tube amp monoblock. This has 50 watts of power. It runs in 4 and 8 ohms. I believe it said it was 85 dB noise rate or 95 dB noise ratio, under 1% THD, things like that. Very similar to the Wilsonton R8, but this is a monoblock design, so there's almost no crosstalk between the two channels, which makes it a little bit better on two. The Wilsonton I also have, and I enjoy it very much. Both are Chinese made. This is, of course, Chinese made, which is why it's probably forgotten a little bit. Point-to-point wiring, there's a little circuit board in there a little bit, so a mixture of the two. It sounds fantastic. And I see them on the open market for around 1,000 US dollars, sometimes below, sometimes more. And there's nothing else on there that's going to be in a tube design for this price. And I'm not really sure why, because I bought it thinking I was going to resell it. And I plugged it in and fell in love with the tube sound. I love the EL34s and the KT88s. I probably could put KT88s in here and I would assume that the wattage would go up a little bit. They do have biasing and everything, so I've heard that that's definitely possible. I've seen, now as far as the looks are concerned, we are talking about a retro type look. It's got, I personally like it. There are some without these gold caps. They are the ASP80Cs. And they are slightly different. This thing is hefty, which is a good sign for an amplifier. It really should be a little bit of heftiness to it. These giant toroidal transformers and the capacitors back here definitely give it some weight. They also give it a lot of current. So I've been able to power just about any of my speakers, even the most demanding. I threw these on the Magnepans and they sounded great. Loved them. And was playing off the very long time. I preferred tubes, 2 solid state, and this one is just absolutely one of my favorites. Got a very Macintoshy type sound to it, at least the tube designs I've noticed. And I consider it as good as they get. I don't know of any other real things. The only thing I've ever had an issue with is that I had turned off one. I think I may have hit the button on the back and the slave went to full power. So I have been turning off the slave first and then the master just to avoid that. Luckily, no damage was caused by the speaker or the amplifier. And I was a little disappointed with that. I hope that they fix that in future versions, that it doesn't do that, but it doesn't happen often, so this was a one-off. I know I haven't turned it always off in that order, and I usually don't have a problem. Outside of that, it's got a little blue LED light in here and display that shows the volume control. This does have a preamp in it, which is nice, but no knobs on it. So you have to use the remote, which I'll grab one right here, to control it. Many of these came with a CD player as well. I don't usually see them sold with the CD players. They've kind of fallen out of favor. These were made in 2003 approximately, maybe a little before, and they're one of the best on the markets. I'll be holding on to it a long time. I'll have to watch it because it's starting to get around that 20-year age mark where capacitors can start to leak. And if you start seeing that, you just have to turn on the soldering iron, buy a new capacitor, and replace it. It's really not a lot of work, and I do recommend these older amps because they're such a great deal. If you were to buy a monoblock, you're talking about new, around $2,000 to $3,000 for a tube amp of this quality. So we're talking about $900, $800 on the used market. You could potentially get one for over half the price, and you know I like how they look. The only problem I've also had with them is that I'd like a dedicated tube stand for them, but I haven't been able to find one that's reasonably costing. There are some that cost thousands, but for me that's just too much. I can fit this on my mono-priced audio rack, and that's things beefy enough to hold the weight, and yes, it does weigh, if I did not mention it. The back of it, let me show you the back of it. I'll show you also, you'll see how heavy it is. I wanted to mention that these are on my Visiton speakers, which are one of my favorite speakers to power with it. Though it's a great place to put it, I don't leave it here because of the vibrations that is caused. They have a fuse back here. They have a terminal for 8 volt or 8 ohms and 4 ohms, and then they have this switch here which controls the master slave. Again, if you want to avoid the problem with the changing volumes, you could turn them both to master. And then they have a stereo plug that goes from one amp to the other. It's a 3.5 inch, 3.5 millimeter, or 3.5, whatever. It's the small little headsets, and they connect the two and communicate between the two. So if you do have one set to master and the other to slave, and you use the remote, both the volumes change and are always equal, which is why, for some reason, when I turned off one of them, I guess the slave thought that it was a signal to go nuts, maybe. Not really sure what it decided, but luckily it didn't destroy any equipment, and yeah, great little amp. Anyways, like I said, look for this and buy one if you get one, a chance to. They're not a ton of supplies, but the value is almost always there, and they are incredible. I've not been interested in anything since listening to it. I've had some Class A's here as well, and I sold those because they were just too hot for me. And these just have that nice warm tube sound. They're very crisp, very clear, and very detailed as well, the sound. So I have no problems even throwing them on a very responsive speaker like the Martin Logans or these Barodynes. But at 50 watts, they're not going to be, fill your house with party sound. They will definitely make your ears ring, but, not to a point where you may want to have them for a giant house party. Outside of that, I highly recommend them. I use them for music only. I do prefer solid states for home theater and television, and some digital reproduction. So these are my tube amps that I use, and you'll be seeing them in a lot of my videos because they're not for sale. And I hope you guys enjoyed them as much as me. Thank you very much. Bye.